Hello, friends. So I want to do a live today on when discomfort is good for you and when it is not good for you. So I'm inspired to do this to do this live today because I just got back from being a camp counselor at a family camp weekend, and it was 4 days of like full-on non-stop games and activities from like 7:30 in the morning until midnight. And there was there was so much that we did during these 4 days, and a lot of the activities were really uncomfortable, right? Like climbing a rock wall while blindfolded, or playing a water polo match with a giant watermelon that's slathered in vegetable oil and having to wrestle with these big adults and try to take the watermelon from them and score a goal, or playing hide and go seek in the pitch black in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night with a bunch of teenagers and encountering a swarm of wasps and a bunch of us getting stung, and I'm literally bruised up and scraped up like all over the place from these wrestling games and everything that we played. And it was just full on. I mean, it was so fun, and it was absolutely exhausting. And a lot of the weekend I was reflecting on how many people I know in my life that would not be down for that sort of thing because it would just be too uncomfortable to think of having to be responsible for dozens and dozens of children for 4 days and having to go through all of those really physical activities, and knowing that it would be so exhausting and draining, and how many people would just be a no for that because it would be too much. And then I also have been reflecting on a lot of my one-on-one clients and people that come to the retreats who have a dream or have a vision of who they would love to be for the world or what they would love to contribute. And they're stopping themselves from really going for it because how uncomfortable it would be, or because they're afraid, or because they think that they can't handle it, or because they think that it'll be lonely, right? Because going for our dreams and becoming leaders is always lonely in a sense, because so many of us are stuck in the just day-to-day of obeying what somebody else tells us to do. So being somebody that steps out of that and is paving his or her own path is lonely, and it's uncomfortable, and it comes along with a lot of intensity, the intensity of vulnerability that it requires to stand for your dreams and stand for a commitment that you have, for a possibility you want to see realized in the world. It's like really uncomfortable, and there's no real escaping that. And a lot of coaching conversations that I end up having are teaching people when discomfort is good for you, and when to know that that discomfort is something that's going to be of service to you, and when to know when to say no to discomfort and to have the compassion for yourself enough to say no to it. So there's a few things that I want to distinguish in this conversation, and I have some notes, but pardon me if I go a little stream of consciousness all over the place because there's a lot that I have to say about this. So first thing to understand is that if we're prioritizing comfort too much, that's never going to lead to fulfillment. There has to be some aspect of willingness to experience discomfort in order for us to be fulfilled in life and to feel like we're fulfilling our need for growth. Growth and having new experiences and having challenges is very high up there on the hierarchy of human needs. So we have to understand that prioritizing our comfort is just not going to have us live the fulfilled life that we crave to live, right? But our culture has taught us that discomfort is the worst thing ever, right? Like we cannot be bothered to have to wash our own dishes or to even have to get up to change the channel on the TV. We have all of these devices to do these things for us. And we live in this capitalist economy that makes money off of are having it easy and not having to do anything really for ourselves. So because our economy has commodified comfort, we have been trained to believe that discomfort is wrong and it's bad and we should avoid it at all costs. But I want to argue that statement and say that discomfort is really good for us when that discomfort is contextualized properly. If we are creating discomfort for ourselves from shame or from a feeling of guilt, or from a feeling of obligation, or from a sense of I have to suffer in order to prove my worth, that is not the kind of discomfort that we want, because that discomfort is coming from shame and this belief that you are a thing that you need to prove to other people. The kind of discomfort that we want is when we're willing to experience intensity, when we're willing to experience discomfort in service of a larger possibility, in service of something that truly inspires us, in service of love, right? So there's discomfort that comes from fear, discomfort that comes from feeling guilty and inflicting punishment upon yourself. And then there's discomfort that comes from being inspired by a possibility that you want to stand for in the world, like a commitment that you have for how you want to serve others, and then being willing to put yourself into the fire, being willing to sit through the intensity of that discomfort, of the loneliness and the fear and the doubt and the uncertainty, and being willing to sit in the incubator of that, because the possibility that you see for the world matters enough that you're willing to undergo that, right? So the second kind of discomfort is the kind that we're looking for, the kind where you have this big reason why, this big possibility that you want to stand for, such that you're willing to put yourself into the fire. And when you're coming from that place of willingness to experience discomfort, then all of a sudden pain becomes completely recontextualized. And we see pain as our teacher, because pain brings presence. Have you noticed that? When you're in pain, whether it's emotional pain of losing a loved one or going through a breakup, or whether it's in physical pain, like I know when I have cramps each month, like I'm more present than I ever am, because I can't really be thinking about anything else besides how much pain my body is in. So there's actually a way that we can channel that pain and transmute it into increased presence. Pain is an extraordinary teacher because it allows us to open our nervous system. And the more we can allow the pain, right? Like think about going to a gym and working out. Like the more that you can be with the discomfort of that, you're actually strengthening your nervous system and you're opening it so that experiences can come through more easily, so that energy can move through your body with greater ease. So pain's a teacher, and it allows us to become even more present than we normally are in our life. And if we're someone that's avoiding pain at all costs, then we're missing that opportunity. We're missing that opportunity to open ourselves and to strengthen our nervous system. Discomfort also leads to fresh perspectives. Like discomfort is a wake-up call. It has us start to see things newly. It's an excellent motivator for problem solving in new ways. And it also obviously increases our empathy. Pain is an experience that every human on this planet can relate to. And there's not many of those experiences that every single human being can relate to. So if we're able to tap into the collectiveness of pain and to how universal it is, then it actually is something that can open our hearts and can connect us even deeper to other humans. When we realize that whatever pain we've experienced, every other human that we encounter has experienced a form of that pain in their own way. And that allows us to really connect with people deeper. The other really important perspective here is to understand, or to not to understand, to choose the perspective that any discomfort always happens for us and not to us. And I say this, like, this is probably the thing that I say the most. If I like have a quote, if I have like a drawstring quote, it's this. It's happening for you, not to you. And this perspective, again, is not the truth. I'm not saying that it's true that pain happens for you. I'm saying that it's the only perspective that gives us power, because discomfort is a fact of life. We cannot escape discomfort no matter how hard we try. So we have two choices. We can either resist it and resent it and hate it and judge it, or we can come from the perspective that it's our teacher and that it's happening for us, and that every piece of discomfort that we experience along our journey of life is always happening in service of our growth. It is always there as a teacher in disguise that has an offering for us. It's offering us a lesson. It's offering us a way to expand our being, a way to strengthen our acceptance, to strengthen our ability to love, to strengthen our ability to release judgment and just be with what is. Because when we wipe away all judgments and all preconceived notions that we have about pain, like we shouldn't experience pain and discomfort is bad, when we wipe those away, then all we're left with is the truth of it. All we're left with is the particular expression that pain is taking in that moment. And when we're able to be with that, then it's beautiful. It's like a work of art. Like if you really allow yourself to sit with sadness, if you really allow yourself to sit with pain and go deeply, deeply into it and be with it without resisting it and without trying to fix it or change it, you'll see that it's just sensations and it's just thoughts. It's literally just energy dancing. So it's not the pain itself that causes us suffering. Suffering equals pain times resistance. So suffering is a choice. Pain is not a choice. Pain is a fact of life. If we can witness pain with full presence, it doesn't cause suffering. It just is. It's just energy. It's just like this wall behind me is blue. If I'm not resisting it, then it's not causing me suffering. But as soon as I get into a story about, oh, this wall shouldn't be blue, it's wrong that this wall is blue, now I'm suffering. It's the same thing with pain. If you can see pain for what it is and accept it as a fact of reality, just accept that it is the reality of that moment. It is the work of art. It is the expression of life that is the universe showing itself to you in a given moment, and there's nothing bad or good or right or wrong about it, then you're just left with the dance of it and there's no suffering. So if suffering equals pain times resistance and we take resistance to zero, then suffering equals zero, right? So if we're able to continually generate this perspective that discomfort happens for us, then it's like we're always in school. We're just always in the academy of life, and it's constantly giving us homework assignments for us to practice. And we can be grateful for every opportunity of discomfort. And when we start to see discomfort in this way, then there's nothing that's holding us back. If there's a possibility that we want to stand for in the world, and what I mean by this is if it matters to you to stop child abuse, and you know that if you were to devote your life to that, it would be uncomfortable and it would cause a lot of discomfort. If you're able to transform your relationship to discomfort, then there's nothing stopping you from being the biggest possible stand for the elimination of child abuse on this planet. To give one example, it's only when we start to think, oh, I'm not supposed to feel uncomfortable. I'm not supposed to feel pain. I'm not supposed to feel afraid. I'm not supposed to feel alone. It's only when we think those things that we're held back. So if we're able to create that perspective that discomfort happens for us, then we actually start to seek it out. We seek out commitments that result in us failing because we seek out the opportunity to witness ourselves through the uncomfortable experience of failure. So failure no longer becomes a deterrent because we know that sitting with that experience of failure is something that's going to open us, and it's going to strengthen our nervous system, and it's going to give less power to our ego that just wants to win and be right. And our ego is the source of our suffering. It's the source of our confinement. So if we subject ourselves to opportunities that entail lots of failure and lots of discomfort, then we're giving less and less power to our ego, and we're becoming more and more free, and we're becoming more and more capable of standing in service of a possibility that is much greater than ourselves. And to the ego, committing yourself to a possibility greater than yourself seems like death because the ego wants to stay small. However, committing yourself to a possibility bigger than yourself is actually the greatest gift that you can give yourself. Because self-consciousness, being insecure, being self-conscious, being doubtful is only purely a function of having your consciousness on yourself. And that's prison. It's prison to have to focus on your small identity winning in the world. That sucks. It's really actually terrible. So the biggest gift that we can give ourselves is the gift of having it not be about us anymore, having it be about something bigger than ourselves, having it be about the realization of peace and love and connection on this planet. And once we're able to put our attention on that, on the hugeness of that, on the hugeness, the enormity, the vastness, the spaciousness of that possibility, and it stops being about us, then we're free. One of my favorite quotes is a quote by Audrey Lord that says, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. So it's the same thing with discomfort. You can replace fear with, it becomes less and less important whether I am uncomfortable. It becomes less and less important whether I am lonely. It becomes less and less important whether I am uncertain. It becomes less and less important whether I am doubtful. It becomes less and less important whether I am insecure, right? You can replace it with any one of those emotional states. Let me give you the quote one more time. It says, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid or uncomfortable or insecure or lonely. Those things just matter less because you've given yourself the gift of standing in service of a possibility bigger than yourself. And then you are no longer this tiny little identity. You're no longer this body. You're no longer your accomplishments. You're no longer what other people think of you. You now are that possibility. You now are the possibility of love. You now are the possibility of peace or joy, or the elimination of animal abuse, or the elimination of child abuse, or the possibility of protecting the planet, right? And then you get to wake up as that huge possibility every day, rather than waking up as this like tiny little self that has all of these problems and insecurities, right? So we often think that we need to fix all of these tiny little problems and insecurities over here first, before we can commit ourselves to a greater possibility. But really, it's the other way around. First, we pick a possibility that's so much huger than ourselves that it lights us up and inspires us. And then when we put attention on that possibility, then our focus is no longer on those insecurities and they just matter less. And we realize that there was nothing to fix about ourselves in the first place. And our insecurities and our doubts were just a red herring that was distracting us from actually committing to what truly matters. So don't worry about that. It doesn't matter if you're insecure. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're not confident. It doesn't matter if you're afraid. What matters is, can you give yourself permission to commit yourself to something bigger than you? And maybe the commitment to world peace is way too big for you right now. That's okay. It's like a muscle that you build up over time. So start with something small. Start with being committed to being the best possible friend that you can be, or being committed to being a stand for honest communication in your family, or being committed to spreading the message of truth and being 100% honest. Like, pick something that feels accessible to you and feels like it would be a weight that you can actually lift. And then you can gradually expand your container in which you can hold bigger and bigger possibilities, okay? So I got a little distracted there, as I told you in the beginning that I was going to, because I'm very passionate about this. So let's go back to when discomfort is in service of our growth and when it isn't. So often a question that I hear from clients is this question of, how can I avoid the discomfort so that I can commit myself to this bigger thing, right? Like, I wanna go on this service trip, but it seems like it's gonna be a lot of hard work. How do I make it easier for myself? And I want us to get rid of that question completely and start asking a completely new question. So rather than asking, how can I avoid this discomfort? Instead, the questions that I want you to ask are, is there an inspiring reason for this discomfort? Do I have a larger inspiring reason why I should subject myself to this discomfort? Or another question is, in service of what is this discomfort? So rather than how do I avoid the discomfort, let's ask, in service of what possibility am I experiencing this discomfort? Is it in service of my growth? Is it in service of awakening of the planet? Is it in service of my strength? Is it in service of me expanding my capacity to feel? Like, what is it in service of? Another question you can ask, rather than how do I avoid the discomfort, you can ask the question of, how can I better equip myself with the inner tools to be able to sit with this discomfort? So how can I create enough spaciousness within my being to where it can contain the discomfort without being overwhelming to me and without causing me to recoil and to go into reactive mode? How can I strengthen myself to be able to sit in the fullness and the intensity of that discomfort? And then the last question is, what can I learn from it? What can I learn from this discomfort? If you're coming from the perspective that the discomfort is happening for you and that the discomfort is your teacher, then start asking the question, what might this discomfort desire to teach me? Why has it showed up in my life as an opportunity? And then you can either choose the thing that entails the discomfort, just like you would choose a college course, right? Like if you are desiring to become a doctor, you're choosing to put yourself through the discomfort of the calculus class or the chemistry class or whatever in service of you being able to become a doctor. You would not ever just put yourself through a calculus class or a chemistry class for the fun of it, because it's really not that fun unless, well, I guess for some people it is. For me, it would not be that fun unless it was in service of a bigger possibility that I saw for myself. So you ask yourself the question, what can I learn from this? What is this in service of? And how can I equip myself to feel this discomfort? And once you've asked yourself those 3 questions, then you can choose. It doesn't mean you have to, right? We often get in the mindset of, oh, well, if there's something that I can learn from this, then I have to do it. But when we choose from that place of I have to, or that place of obligation, then we become the victim of that thing. And then we're not actually learning from it, because then we're just resenting the chemistry teacher, if that analogy still holds up, right? And you're not really getting that much out of the chemistry class because you're in this victim mentality of, oh my God, it sucks so much that I have to take this chemistry class. You're not contextualizing it properly. You're not contextualizing it as a necessary step towards a greater vision that brings you love and joy and inspiration, right? You're not choosing it for yourself. You're being the victim of it. So once you've asked yourself the questions of, in service of what is this discomfort and how can I equip myself better to be able to hold it, and what's my inspiring reason for this discomfort, then you can really choose, after considering all of the reasons, you can choose, okay, is this discomfort something that I really do fully choose for myself or not? And we have to remember that there's no right answer. We're not a bad person if, after considering all the discomfort that it would require, if we choose not to pursue that possibility. That doesn't mean we're selfish. That doesn't mean we're a bad person. And if we think that we have to experience the discomfort in order to prove ourselves, then we're just setting ourselves up for victim mentality, right? So once you've really created that inspiring vision for yourself and you see the bigger reason why the discomfort could be in service of your growth and the growth of humanity or the world, then you're free to choose if that's something that you're willing to do. You have to be willing. That is the key. Willingness is absolutely the key. You have to be willing and you have to choose it for yourself. Just like if you sign up for a chemistry class, you get, okay, I'm choosing this. This is not a punishment. This is not something that somebody is doing to me. I'm choosing this because of the learning opportunity that it is. And when you're coming from that perspective, then you can be grateful for the learning opportunity rather than resistant to it and resentful of it, right? So again, going back to what we talked about earlier with suffering equals pain times resistance, and when you can take resistance down to 0, then suffering comes down to 0 as well. We have to understand that discomfort, any form of discomfort, is amplified by us not being connected to our purpose. So often we feel the most lonely, or we feel the most uncomfortable, or we feel the most sad, not really when we're disconnected from other people. We don't really feel the most lonely when we're disconnected to others. We feel the most lonely when we're disconnected from ourselves, when we're disconnected from our true purpose. And when we think that it's because we're disconnected from others or because our life isn't comfortable enough, then we go start searching for the solutions in all the wrong places. Whereas really the solution is, who are you not giving yourself permission to be? Okay? If you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling disconnected, if you're feeling overwhelmingly uncomfortable in your life, like, who are you not giving yourself permission to be? What greater possibility are you not giving yourself permission to step into? You don't need to go surround yourself by people, although maybe you do, but probably what's needed is for you to connect more deeply to yourself and give yourself permission to be the stand for the change that you want to see in the world. And that is what is missing, right? So kind of to wrap this all up, in conclusion, what we need to really be careful about is where we're coming from when we choose discomfort for ourselves. Often people are choosing to inflict discomfort upon themselves because they think that they have something to prove. And again, this is totally coming from ego. This is coming from you thinking that you're like a fixed object, that you're a thing, and you're trying to prove to other people in the world, like, oh, look at what kind of thing I am. Look, I'm a good enough thing. Do you see? I'm good enough, right? And that's not the place that we want to come from when we're choosing discomfort. We don't want to come from this place of, I need to collect evidence to prove to you and to prove to myself that I'm good enough. We want to come from a place of, I'm inspired by the possibility of who I could be for the world. I'm inspired by the contribution that I could be. And that vision that I see of the world that we could live in, whatever that vision is for you, whether that's the vision of a world in which we have clean water, or whether that's the vision of a world in which animals are treated respectfully, or whether that's the vision of a world in which women are treated respectfully, or whether that's the vision of a world in which we all have opportunities to create and to be artists and collaborate, or whether that's the vision of a world in which families are nurturing and loving, or in which divorce is actually an inspiring, empowered transition. You know, whatever it is for you, whatever that possibility is for you that you see for the world, let your choice, let your choosing of the discomfort in your life come from that possibility. Allow yourself to recontextualize any discomfort that you experience as something that's happening for you and something that's happening in service of some vision that you have for yourself or for others or for the planet that's inspiring to you. So whether that's that you are really frustrated at work and work is really hard for you, or even whether that's that you hate getting stuck in traffic, for those of my friends who live in LA with me, right? Or literally look at your life and scan through and see, where do I experience discomfort in my life that I'm resisting? Where am I resisting discomfort? And then pull those little instances of discomfort that you experience out and examine them and ask yourself, is this discomfort contextualized as something that I'm doing in service of a greater possibility? And if not, then why the heck are you putting yourself through that discomfort? Really take a look at that. Take a look at what your ego is getting out of you putting yourself through that discomfort, right? Because your ego is probably either getting the opportunity to be a victim, which egos love. Victimhood is like the yummiest, delicious, juiciest food for our egos. So your ego is either getting the opportunity to be a victim of discomfort, or you're getting to avoid responsibility for really having to be a stand for the change that you want to see in the world. And again, that goes back to you being the victim and hiding behind that. So if there's discomfort in your life that you're still resisting and that you're not fully choosing, and you're not choosing the perspective that that discomfort is happening for you, for your growth, and in service of a greater possibility that you see for the world, then really ask yourself, okay, if it's not because of a greater possibility, then what is having me choose this discomfort? And how can I get real about that? How can I get honest with myself about that and call myself out on my BS, right? Because when we give ourselves the freedom to choose every instance of discomfort that we have in our life and to choose coming from the perspective that it's happening for us, then we're totally free and our experience of discomfort is transformed. It's like, I love going to the gym. I love working out. Not because it's easy, it's uncomfortable, and that's what I love about it, because I know that I'm growing, and that's inspiring to me. It's inspiring to me to feel like I'm getting stronger and feel like I'm getting more fit. But if I were to go to the gym every day and resent it and hate that I had to get on the treadmill and I had to lift weights and I had to do ab exercises, then I'm being totally inauthentic. Why am I inflicting that on myself if I'm just going to be the victim of it, right? All right, so hopefully this was clear to you all. If there's any questions that you have about how this applies, or if you have any instance of, okay, but what about this? I don't really see how I'm being the victim of this discomfort, or I don't see how I can better recontextualize this discomfort as something that's in service of a larger vision for myself. Or if there's any part of this that wasn't clear to you, please reach out to me and let me know, and I would be more than happy to clarify and give you a little bit of additional coaching on that in your specific instance. So just to kind of review some highlights from this coaching. The first thing is prioritizing comfort does not lead to fulfillment. Discomfort is a human need, and we have to have a certain threshold of discomfort in our life in order to feel fulfilled. And we just have to be really careful about, are we coming from punishing ourselves with discomfort, or are we coming from caring for ourselves and respecting ourselves and being generous with ourselves and giving ourselves the gift of discomfort, just like we give ourselves the gift of getting to go to the gym and exercise, right? Or give ourselves the gift of getting to read a challenging book that really is intellectually stimulating, right? The second point is that discomfort is most challenging when we're not inspired by the reason why we're experiencing that discomfort, when we're just like mindlessly experiencing the discomfort and we're not contextualizing it for ourselves with a greater reason why we should experience that discomfort. The third point is that pain is not something to be avoided. Pain is a teacher, and pain actually brings presence. Pain brings the capacity for empathy. Pain brings the capacity for greater problem solving. Pain is actually an ally. It's not something that we need to avoid. And pain does not necessarily entail suffering, because suffering equals pain times resistance. So there's only suffering when there's resistance. And resistance is the factor that we can control and that we can lessen and bring down to zero. The next piece of advice is to always come from the perspective that your discomfort is happening for you and ask it questions. You can literally communicate with your discomfort. Whether it's pain in your body or whether it's emotional pain or whether it's fear, you can talk to it and you can say, hello, discomfort. What can I do for you? What are you here for today? What are you here to teach me, right? Just like somebody showing up at your door, knocking. You wouldn't just avoid the knocking for forever. You would open the door and you'd say, hi, how can I help you, right? So you can open up that dialogue with your discomfort as well, and you can ask it, what are you here to teach me? And just always come from that perspective that your discomfort is a teacher, right? And then the next bullet point is rather than asking yourself the question, how can I avoid discomfort? Instead, start asking yourself the questions, is there an inspiring reason for this? Is there an inspiring reason for this discomfort? In service of what is this discomfort? What's it in service of, right? And then how can I better equip myself to experience this discomfort without trying to hide it or fade it or fix it? And then what can I learn from this discomfort? So those are the 4 new questions that you're going to ask yourself rather than the question, how can I avoid this discomfort? And once you've asked yourself those 4 questions, then you can really ask yourself, okay, am I choosing this? Now that I know what it's in service of, and now that I know the possibility of the discomfort, now in service, or now do I choose this? Am I willing? Am I willing to experience that discomfort? And only choose it if you're willing. Because if you're not willing, then you're choosing to be the victim of it, and that is not what we want, obviously. The next thing is we feel the most lonely, not when we are disconnected from other people, but when we are disconnected from our true purpose. So don't try to just placate that feeling of loneliness or that feeling of fear or that feeling of discomfort. Try to connect yourself to a purpose and recontextualize it in a much bigger way. And then be really careful where you're coming from when you're choosing discomfort. If you're coming from shame, if you're coming from guilt, don't choose discomfort from those places. Those are not good places to choose discomfort from. The places to choose discomfort from are love and inspiration and connection to a possibility greater than yourself, okay? Have it come from self-compassion, right? If you think about it in terms of discomfort is a human need, like food and sleep and water, then food and sleep and water are gifts that we give to ourselves because we love ourselves. In the same way, discomfort is a gift that we give to ourselves because we love ourselves, not because we hate ourselves, not because we need to fix ourselves, and not because we have anything to prove, but because we love ourselves and we want to give ourselves all of the things that we need. We want to meet all of our needs, right? And then again, I will just repeat the quote that I've said a few times, but I love it, and I think it's like everything that we need to know. And it's an Audrey Lord quote that says, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid, or in this case, whether I am uncomfortable, or whether I am alone, or whether I am doubtful, or whether I am insecure. It just becomes less and less important as soon as you dare to be powerful and to use your strength in service of your vision, all right? So I'd love to hear your feedback on all of this. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you next time.